going to tie the latest Remnant Fly today. This is a Remnant Fly. It's kind of like a Sculpin pattern. At least that's what I was going for. Just some Marabou on here. I've got a straight shanked hook and a cone. I ran across that. Started thinking Sculpin's a real popular pattern for smallmouth here in the Midwest. And just kind of threw some things together, kind of like a woolly bugger-ish type fly. So there's the latest Remnant Fly, a little Sculpin pattern. I'll go ahead and get started. So I'll start the Remnant Fly here, placing my hook in the vise. This is I'm thinking it's a 3366 Mustad and about a size 6. I'm going for something kind of Sculpin-y today. I'm going to debarb the hook. I have a black cone that I'm going to put on this. So I will take it back out of the hook, or out of the vise. And I've got a black cone that I'll slide on here. I debarbed it so that cone would get around a little bit easier. You may or may not have to, depending on the size of the cone. Yeah, like I said, I'm going for something kind of Sculpin-y. Don't know that this is going to work exactly right, because generally you're going to want that to ride hook point up. I think this cone being on the hook shank here is going to change the center of gravity such that it is going to be heavier here and it will flip over. For thread, I'm going to use an 8/0 uni thread in an olive color. I'm going to attach my thread just along the hook shank here. Again, I got the hook and I got the bead. I started thinking about different flies that I could do. And what I was looking for, and like I said, kind of a Sculpin-y, woolly bugger kind of Sculpin-y idea kind of started forming in my head. That's what I'm going to go with. I got some Marabou for a tail here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this Marabou feather and this longer stuff here. I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to actually clip this feather right in the middle. And this is the part that I'm going to use for the tail. It's a little more wispy, but this could actually be used for something else, which I'll explain my thoughts in just a second here. I'm going to tie that in about a shank length long. A lot of your Sculpins kind of have a shorter body and fins, a little bit stocky up front. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. Is this is in the water. This tail is going to trim out just a little bit, and we'll go for a little bit chunkier body. I'm going to wrap that right up towards the bead. I'm going to trim this just a little bit long. That way, as I wrap some more thread in here, it's going to lay that Marabou inside of that cone just a little bit. Bringing my thread back down to the end of the shank. I'm going to tie in my hackle. Again, I'm just going for a simple, not necessarily woolly boogerish type fly, but I'm going to use a olive hackle here. You could use like an olive grizzly would be nice. I didn't have any. Definitely want to have something that's going to give you a nice taper going forward. I'm going to tie that in. And get my thread back down the end of the shank for the body. Now for the body, I'm going to dub this. This is a old Chartreuse product. Chartreuse is not around anymore. They used to be real popular back about 12, 15 years ago. This is a medium olive. SST is what it's called. It's kind of like a trilobal. anyway, I happen to have this in with all my remnant stuff. Thought it was kind of a nice sparkly color. And I'm just going to dub this on here. But I'm going to dub this in a couple of layers because I want the body to be tapered towards the front. This stuff is very, very long fibered, which is fine. It'll get twisted up along the thread real well. I don't mind if this is even a little bit loose. But I'm going to start dubbing that in the back, winding this forward. You could almost even do a direct dubbing kind of thing with this. If you don't know what that is, take a look at either the Near Enough Sculpin or Near Enough Crayfish videos that I've done. A little wax on your fingers might not hurt. This stuff slides pretty easily. So it's actually sliding through my fingers a good bit. Wrap this up here. And again, if it's a kind of a fat, chunky body, that's fine. Get a few wraps over to kind of bind that dubbing down in a little bit, help hold it together. Like I said, this would do real well with just doing some direct dubbing. Nice long fibers in there. Fill that up right here, right up next to that cone. I still have some room at that cone, and that's good. I'm going to palmer this hackle in, 4, maybe 5 wraps as I work my way up. You could put a rib in here if you want, something to help to protect it just a little bit. Bring that right up into that cone there. Put away the excess. Now, I had originally thought about putting in something kind of a light colored on the bottom as this flips over like this, having something lighter colored down here. But I'm going to pass on that. But what I am going to do, Sculpins have very, very pronounced pectoral fins. They actually flare in a downward direction like this as they flare out. That helps them utilize the current to keep and push them down to the bottom. This is where I could use some of the fluff from this Marabou feather. I'm actually going to throw in, I got a Chartreuse grizzly hackle here, and I'm just going to throw in a little bit of this on the sides. Going to give me a little bit of a profile to the side, as well as it's not necessarily going to help hold it to the bottom. It's just going to give that kind of look that I'm going for. So I'm going to collect some of that in my hand here, strip that away, and then collect it together. And I'm just going to tie that in right on the side. And notice I got a little bit of extra there. That's fine, because that is going to squeeze down into, into that cone. As I put more thread wraps on there, that's going to squeeze down into that cone a little bit. Now I'm just putting in a few extra thread wraps to help secure that cone. But notice I've got just a little bit of color and broad hackles or broad barbs there to kind of represent those pronounced pectoral fins. Strip away some for the other side. And we do the same thing. Yep, those ended up being a little bit longer. So take those out. You do want to try and match up the length on those. I'm not going to be too concerned, like this one's still a little bit longer. And let me try one more time. Going to moisten this and kind of stroke that back to get it out of the way of the thread. Then wrap that in. Yeah, now I'm a little more even. And I'm going to sweep all that back. And again, here my thread wraps are just going to kind of pile up a little bit here. And that's just to get down into that cone and secure it. Yeah, that cone's kind of wobbly, isn't it? I'll show you one thing we can do here to help that. We'll go ahead and do a whip finish here. You could potentially fill that area in with some dubbing if you wanted to. Throw in some head cement down in there. Now, with my thread detached, I'm now going to reattach it right behind the eye of the hook and in front of that cone. This is done on a number of different flies. The John Barr's meat whistle is one that comes to mind here, where you do the same thing. You reattach your thread right behind the eye of the hook. Now I'm going to put in some thread wraps to push that cone back. It's going to push that cone back against that body to secure it, and it's going to give me a nice taper going down to the eye of the hook. See, now that cone's nice and secure. So with my thread secured in front there, now I'll also put some head cement on that. You can put a little UV or epoxy on that if you want to add a little extra protection. So that is the latest Remnant Fly, kind of a Sculpin-y looking thing. That was the idea. I suppose you could trim some of those hackles back. Pull some of these that are a little long, a little shorter. There you go. Just a little something with some leftover materials to make a little Sculpin pattern. Probably do well with some of the smallmouth around here. Doesn't have to be more than, I got maybe an inch, a little about inch and a quarter, inch and a half here, and that's about what you want. Most of the Sculpins are only less than 2 inches around here in the Midwest anyway. So that is the latest Remnant Fly, little Sculpin pattern. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.